As you go through high school, there are certain people that you remember forever. Friends that you may never see again, older students that you admired from afar, and teachers. Sometimes the teachers are the greatest motivators. Some of them really know how to pick you up when you're feeling down. But these stories I have for you today aren't those kinds of stories. All through my high school life, a lot of weird things happened. One of the weirdest things is, and this is going to sound very strange, all of my science teachers got pregnant. From the time I was in 6th grade to the time I graduated, every single science teacher I had got pregnant. So you had all female science teachers, huh? Nope. Let me list this off for you. 6th grade, my science teacher, Miss Euster, got pregnant. 7th grade, my science teacher, Miss Couch, got pregnant. 8th grade, my science teacher, Mr. Stoner, yes, that was his name, his wife became pregnant. Moving on to high school, my science teacher, Miss Brownsberger, got pregnant. 10th grade, Miss Newton. 11th grade, Mr. Grady's wife. And 12th grade, I did not have a science class, so instead, I replaced it with a Spanish class where it should have been. And my Spanish teacher, Miss Seymour, had a baby. Now, I don't know the statistics of this, but this followed me my entire high school life. People would literally blame me for the pregnancy of all these women, and not only was it easy to predict who became pregnant the next year, but I almost started to think that I had some sort of Mary Mother of Jesus powers or something. The next story took place my freshman year. I had a history teacher named Mr. Herning, very cool guy, and I really enjoyed the class because of how he taught. One day, I was going into math class when all of a sudden someone pulls me out of math, not complaining, and takes me to a student group therapy class. There were some troubled kids sitting in a circle, and I was introduced to them all. My math class was going to be replaced with this class depending on what I said. Now, I had no idea what was going on. Why was I in group counseling? I asked the instructor, and she said that one of my teachers was under the suspicion that I had, get this, chronic depression. And the reason said teacher believed that I had this was because I looked too happy. Now, I get it. Some people hide depression behind smiles and laughter, but this was ridiculous. I was one of the happiest kids at school, definitely one of the most outgoing, and I showed no signs of depression whatsoever. But this class got me out of math, so I milked it. This last part of the story is going to sound really stupid, but I was a freshman and I like to mess with people. The counselor would ask us what we did at home to calm ourselves, what kind of scene we would put ourselves in to feel more relaxed. And a lot of other kids said that they played video games, watched TV, a few said they read outside. They came to me, and it was the third day, so I really let them have it. I told them that what I did was rub peanut butter and honey on my body, walk into the woods, lay down, and let wild animals lick it off. I know, I know this is probably the stupidest thing you've ever heard, but I was messing around. I swear to God, the teacher stood up and said, "Yeah, you're not depressed. You don't have to be here anymore." Anyway, I found out later that it was Mr. Herning who thought I had depression. Not sure what made him think it, but it was a fun experience until I had to continue my math class. I don't know about you guys, but did you ever have that one teacher that gave you a really good grade just for existing? That was Miss Newton for me. I talked about her a bit earlier, but she was one of my science teachers, and she was amazing. She absolutely adored me, mostly because I would always come to her class singing, and she would sing along with me, but I was easily one of her favorite students, and I can prove it. So we had this ginormous end-of-the-year assignment on Ebola. We had to read a book titled The Hot Zone and then basically rewrite the book in our own rendition. Now, back in high school, I didn't enjoy reading. The teachers always picked the cheapest and worst books, so to be honest, I read like half the thing and then asked my friends how it ended. Now, the project was the hard part for us. We not only had to rewrite the book in our own rendition and understanding, we had to cite places that has seen Ebola, list animals that have been known to come in contact with it, how it's spread in the past, to what extent, and we had to make a cover for our book. The cover could not be called The Hot Zone, and it had to be artistic and representative of the material. I wish so badly that I could show you the cover art I made. It was terrible. Other students used Photoshop or collaged pictures together. I used MS Paint. I was the only kid who did that because really, I didn't care. I drew a picture of a monkey and an airplane crash landing, some guy dying in MS Paint. And I even titled the cover The Hot Zone, which you were not supposed to do. Now, two of my friends worked together on this project, which was an option. They shared responsibilities and finished the entire project, but one of them, named Gage, I've talked about him before, was not very well liked by Miss Newton. So the time came for us to turn in the project. I turned in like 3 papers, one of which was my 5-minute MS Paint cover, and 2 others were just internet links to articles which I was going to use to research the project. But I put off the assignment and didn't worry about it at all. Nick and Gage turned in their papers, and a week later, we got our grades. Nick got a B+. Gage got a D. Miss Newton said that she could tell that Nick did most of the work. And what did I get? I got a B! I'm not even kidding at all. I got a B. And Gage and I actually went up to her in shock. She told Gage that she expected more from him, and she told me that she loved the research that I put into my rendition and thought that the cover art was cute. She said that I put a very childlike innocence on an extremely dangerous topic. I got a B. The next teacher was my health teacher named Mr. Hager. He was a really great guy. So he'd bring in marshmallows or sugar cubes in the class and throw them at me during class. It got to a point where I started catching them in my mouth, and he would literally start bringing candy in for me to catch while class went on. I got away with a lot in his class too. Like one day, I made this kid named Logan very angry. He literally started chasing me around the room. I went to Mr. Hager's desk, grabbed a handful of assignments that had yet to be passed out, threw them in the air, and screamed, "Distraction!" Needless to say, I had to pick them all back up, but I did a lot of weird stuff in the class and never got in any trouble. The coolest one, though, was with the apple. So you know that old thing where you give an apple to a teacher? Well, Mr. Hager, though being a health teacher, did not like apples. One day I gave him an apple and he threw it in the trash after he thought I was gone. About 2 minutes later, I walked up to him with it and said, "Hey, I think you dropped this." The look on his face was priceless. He almost looked guilty for throwing it away, but also seemed a little confused. He thanked me and walked away again, making sure I wasn't around, and threw it away yet again. Every day I would break into his classroom and put the apple back on his desk, and every day I left him a note. "I think you dropped this." It was always a different apple, but it cracked him up, and sometimes I would go home to find apples in my backpack. The last teacher's name is Mr. Boker. This guy was quite the character, and not always in a good way. You know that teacher who isn't necessarily a creeper, but he takes to female students a lot more? That was this guy. He was my math teacher. So get this. He would teach us for about 10 minutes, give us an assignment to do, and at the end of the week, we would get a test. But the test would not always be on what we were learning. It would be on next week's material. Pretty much everyone failed the tests, and he would always say that we had the tools to complete the test, but never use them. Thing was, we weren't allowed to use the book to help us during the tests, so if I actually wanted to pass his tests, I would have to study that week's material to do the homework, then study next week's lessons to complete the tests. But if I ever had any trouble understanding, I would walk up to him and ask him how to solve some of the problems. His response was always, "Go look in the book." He never replied to me. It was always, "Go look in the book." Now that would have been all fine and dandy if he would have done it to everyone, but he didn't. It didn't matter if you needed help on homework, on tests, on quizzes, even during tests. If you were a girl, he would help you through the question and basically give you the answer. However, if a male student asked him for help on homework, he would always say, "Go look in the book," or, "I can't help you on a test." But the worst one that he had ever done, I was waiting for my English class to start, so I was standing at the front door of my classroom. My English class was right next door to the math class, and Mr. Boker was out in the hallway waiting for his students to show up. A student walks up to him and starts asking him about golf. See, Mr. Boker is also the golf coach. The kid goes on about his swing. "See, coach, the thing is, I keep practicing my swing and I can't seem to get it down. Every time I hit the ball, it always veers to the left, and no matter how I position myself, I always end up hitting the ball too far to the left. Is there anything that you can do? Any tips that you can give me to help me improve my swing?" This is when Mr. Boker puts his hand on the young man's shoulder and says, "Son, I'm a golf coach, not a swing coach," and walks into his classroom and leaves the kid jaw-dropped. What? Golf is literally nothing but swinging. How could you? What a lazy... but it cracked me up. My school.